Hello everyone, welcome to ServiceNow Mastery series. So in our previous video, we have discovered the topic of UI policy, data policies. We have also done some of the practical examples. We have also looked into all the ITSM modules and into the ITIL practices as well. We have also seen about the service catalog, record producers, and so many of the items. Now, today we are going deep dive into complete ServiceNow development. So basically, ServiceNow Glide API is our today topic. Why the ServiceNow Glide API is important, what it is exactly, what is its use, what is there in the ServiceNow development. If we deep dive into it, so we have to know about the Glide APIs. What is that? So let's begin our journey of ServiceNow development from today onwards. Prior to that, whatever the videos you have seen into this ServiceNow Mastery channel, it's you can think about more into the ServiceNow administration part. From today onwards, we will be doing much more practical examples also on the ServiceNow development. And from today onwards, you on the daily basis, you'll get one ServiceNow development topic video and also related to the practical examples on it. So let's deep dive into it. Glide API. What is Glide API? So basically, as this document is shown in your screen, what is Glide API? So I have created this document for you guys. The Glide API is a collection of JavaScript classes and methods provided by ServiceNow. Okay, so one more thing which I just want to tell you before we go deeply into this Glide API. So before this Glide API topic, or for go much more into ServiceNow development, that you guys have to knowledge of it, that is JavaScript. So basic JavaScript, you guys have knowledge of it, and I'm assuming that you guys have knowledge, and on the basis of data I am continuing ServiceNow development topic. So the Glide API is a collection of JavaScript classes and methods provided by the ServiceNow to interact with the platform database, system records, users, session, dates, logging, and UI behavior. So first of all, what is like API? API is the application programming interface. API is basically used to connect between the database and with the UI. So uh, whatever the data which is shown to you on your UI, it's fetched from the database by the help of the API. So in the service now, they have their own APIs which is called as Glide API. So Glide API is a collection of the JavaScript classes and the methods which is provided by ServiceNow to interact with the database, with the system records, whatever the data is there in the ServiceNow. It's useful. It's basically used to Glide API is used to interact with the platform database, with the platform data, with the platform like whatever the system records is there inside the service now. Um, which user is logged in? It show the detail of that user, session, dates, logging, or the UI behavior. So everything is maintained, or I would say it's a main part of service now. In simple terms, if I would say, Glide API allow the developers and the administrators to read, write, update, delete, and control the data within ServiceNow without writing complex SQL queries. So we all have knowledge about SQL queries, right? Basically, SQL does what? CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. These are the four main operations which is done by SQL. So in ServiceNow Glide API, it's like the SQL queries only. So in SQL we have to write the complex SQL queries, but in ServiceNow Glide APIs, do that task. Through the use of the Glide API, we can do read, write, update, and delete operations on the data. Okay, and the Glide APIs allow the developers and administrators. If the ServiceNow admin also there, so it allow the developers as well as administrators to perform the CRUD operations on ServiceNow. Why is Glide API needed? This is a question which comes into your mind. So Glide API is needed because ServiceNow does not allow direct SQL queries for security reasons. I told you before, right? ServiceNow has its own API which is known as a Glide API. So Glide API is needed because we can't write SQL queries. We can't perform the CRUD operations through the use of SQL in ServiceNow. Instead of SQL, all the CRUD operations we can do through Glide API. It ensures the data integrity and the platform security, which is very much important. It provides optimized and reusable methods. It supports server side and client side scripting. So, these two things I will make it very clear to you. Server side and client side scripting. In the ServiceNow development, whenever you listen this two things from my side, so client side scripting is whichever the data is shown into the UI. So it's a client side. Server side means whichever the data is in the database. I hope it is clear to you what is server side and client side. It makes the scripting faster, cleaner, and more readable. The Glide API is needed for this purpose. I hope it's now clear to you. Where is Glide API used? Where is Glide API used? It's a it's a question wherever there is a data and you have to perform the operations, whether it's a delete operation, you have to delete some of the records, or you have to modify, or you have to create one new record, or you have to read the data, read the record, then the Glide API is used. So in the simple terms, in the layman term, Glide API is used for the CRUD operations. Glide API are used in the business rules whenever, like if we deep dive into it in the Glide API, then you can also tell to that person Glide API are used in the business rules, script include. Don't worry, these all are the new terms for you, but we will one by one. But I'll explain you all these topics one by one. So business rules, script include, client scripts, UI policies, whichever we have done, which we have done. Earlier, that UI policy, schedule, job, fix script, background scripts, access control rules. So all these in all these things Glide API is used. Then comes types of the Glide API in ServiceNow. How many types of the Glide APIs are there in ServiceNow? Glide APIs are broadly divided into two types: server side API and client side API. Right? Client side API, which is shown into your UI. In the UI, whenever you open the incident or create that any of the incident, so the data which is shown in the UI is known as the client side. Server side means the data which is fetched from the database. It is known as the server side API. So it like the types of the Glide API which is there in ServiceNow, it's a server side API and the client side API. Inside these two broadly divided category, there are so many of the APIs which we will going to explore. Server side API, these run on the ServiceNow server and have full access to the database, as I said it before. So the common server-side Glide APIs are Glide Record, Glide Aggregate, Glide System, Glide Date and Time, Glide Schedule, Glide Session, Glide User. All these are the ServiceNow. And another one is the client-side API. These run on the user browser and have limited access, right? So this common client side APIs are G underscore form, G underscore user, Glide Ajax, and G underscore scratchpad. Now we will go one by one into more detail in the Glide APIs. Like we will explore glide record, glide aggregate, glide system, glide date and time, and all of these API of server side and client side. We will explore these types of the glide API in the next video. So this is the first part in which I have explained you what is the glide API, and what basically this glide API is needed, where it is used, and we will explore more. So I think now at this moment it is very much clear in your mind that why glide API is used, what is the need of it, and does service now perform CRUD operations on the SQL, like we have to install the SQL into our system and then connect with the service now? No, nothing like that, because service now has its own SQL, which is glide API. So we will explore these server side and client side glide APIs in our next video. So stay tuned for next part of the video. Till then, bye bye.